Welcome to CCTV Town Meeting Television. I am honored to be joined by Greg Marchildon of AARP Vermont. Welcome, Greg.
Yes, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and you serve as the executive director for AARP Vermont. Can you just tell us a little bit, tell us what that is? Who are you?
Who am I? Well, I am the executive director of AARP Vermont. AARP, as some of your viewers probably know, is a national organization that tries to serve the interests of people 50 and over. And we work on a range of issues at the federal level, the state level, and the local level. So we do public policy and lobbying in those three spaces. We also do a lot of offer some community service-based programming. Right now, we're really in the heat of the tax season, and AARP has a long-standing volunteer-driven program called Tax Aid, where we provide free tax services to not just our members, but to really anybody. And we do that in church basements and in libraries all across the state. And then finally, we do a lot of work also in the consumer education space, particularly in the areas of consumer fraud and scams. And then finally, we do what we call livable communities. And that work really is focused on making Vermont cities and towns strong and great places to grow old. So that has, a lot of that's tied into things like transportation and housing, not just the affordability of housing, but appropriate housing for an aging population. And can people get around? Can they ride bikes? Can they walk? Are there sidewalks? And really trying to be very supportive of economic development in towns so that they can be really good and vibrant places for people to age in place.
Great. So you have, you mentioned first and foremost the advocacy and the public policy work. AARP Vermont is in the Vermont legislature on a regular basis, and we're tracking a couple of bills. So let's talk about those one by one. Let's talk about H557, which is approaching the question of prescription drug pricing. Tell me what's going on in that. Where is that in the legislature right now, and what difference will it make in the lives of Vermonters if this passes?
Yeah, I mean, this is a bill we have worked on with the state treasurer, Mike Pichek, before the session, and are strong supporters of this bill. It seems that it's done very well, cleared its House committees. But what it is another attempt to bring down the cost of prescription drugs for real people in Vermont. They still remain high. They still, drugs that sort of people need the most and take the most tend to outpace the general rate of inflation, sort of year in and year out. And what AARP is a purchasing consortium. So I try to explain it this way. It's like going to Costco. So when you go to Costco and you buy, paper towels in a package of 20, the per unit cost of the paper towels is cheaper than if you go to a smaller store and buy it in a unit of 1 or 2. So what AARP does, it would have Vermont joining a handful of other states, including some larger states like Oregon and Colorado, but Connecticut's involved in this as well. And it puts these, would put Vermonters in this sort of large purchasing pool, which would allow Array, which is sort of an independent company, to negotiate lower costs for the states that are involved in this program. And Connecticut's seen some real success, and so is Oregon and Colorado. And since Vermont is not a big state, certainly population-wise, also geographically, this is a really smart bit of public policy because we're leveraging places that are much larger than us and are going to receive the same kind of benefit. And for example, we've seen in the other states that have been a part of AARP since its inception, that people can save up to 80% on generics and up to 20% on brand name drugs. I want to be clear that this is not going to solve the problem of high cost of prescription drugs for everybody. It's not. But it's another tool and one that can provide some relief to people who are purchasing prescription drugs regularly, maintenance drugs regularly, and take some real dollars off those charges for them. So we're hopeful that that this will move. It seems to have some very strong support and tripartisan support. And we're optimistic that that we can get this across the finish line. The bill only has a $50,000 money piece attached to it, and that's would allow us to to get those startup costs going. But Array sort of takes care of everything, so it's really no cost to the individual consumer, which also makes it even better. But again, this is an important bill, one that will help lower costs, but there is still a lot more to do in this area of prescription drug costs. But we think that this can be a part of a larger solution, and we're excited to be supporting it and communicating with our members about it. And we've seen some great leadership from the state treasurer on this as well. So we're pleased with where it's at right now, and are hopeful it will move on to full passage and Governor Scott's desk.
Great. So that's H557, and then that'll cross over to the Senate if it passes out of the House. What committees is it in right now?
Right now, it's going to be. I think it's Ways and Means is taking a look because there's a fiscal note, but it'll cross to Senate Finance, we believe. And we'll see whether there's other committees of jurisdiction that will, want to take a look at it. Senate Health, for example, are going to be a part of it on the Senate side. So we'll look, to be the same way we're in the House, to make ourselves available to answer questions and to demonstrate our support for the bill as it moves onto the Senate.
Now, it
does not seem to be a much controversy around this bill at all.
Yeah.
And again, with a small fiscal note and a program that's already in operation and that we can demonstrate its effectiveness, we've talked to many legislators on all sides of the political aisle in Montpelier, and all think this is a good idea. There's no reason not to do this. But if we don't do it, then we're not offering another option for people to lower their costs. And again, it's not a panacea, but it's a good, solid step forward. And anything that we can do to lower costs of prescription drugs for Vermonters, we ought to be doing.
Great. Another project in the legislature that you're working on is S231, and S standing for Senate. So this is a bill that's in the Senate, the Caregiver Tax Credit. And you came and you spoke with us about this, sort of the amount of unpaid labor that goes in by family and relatives, the close cohort of older Vermonters for their care. Talk to us a little bit about this Caregiver Tax Credit and what are you seeing in the Senate on this?
Well, this is in Senate Finance, and it sort of remains on the wall at this point, as they say in Montpelier, which means that no action has been taken yet on this bill. It is a tax credit. I think that there are some legislators that we've spoke to who have suggested this may not be a great session to be asking for and working toward any kind of issues that are associated with money, like a tax credit. We would beg to differ. This is a huge issue in our state. We're the second oldest state in the nation, and we're seeing a lot of people doing family caregiving that are exposing themselves to hardship. We also know it's popular. In a poll that we did about a year and a half ago, it showed that almost 82% of Vermonters support a tax credit for family caregivers. Democrats, Independents, Republicans, and so it's popular. And we also know that that family caregivers are taking money out of their own pockets to help provide care for a parent or a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle or even a sibling, for an example. They're spending money on things like transportation, prescription drug costs, assistive equipment or assistive technology to help that person in their household. Home modifications. If you live in an old house in a small rural community and you need a ramp because that's the only way a person can get in and out of the house, those can cost $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. So we're fortunate that we live in a state where people do care for each other and where community still does matter. I would argue that that's not true all over the place, but that still remains, I think, a very Vermont value and one that's really important. But at the same time, if you have a full-time job and you've got an aging parent who needs assistance, and getting someone to pay for someone else to do that is extraordinarily expensive. So you find yourself, taking leave from your job, and you're exposing yourself maybe to, not getting the wages that you've earned, or you are using your own personal vacation or sick time to do this, so that you're not getting any respite yourself, which is what really vacation time is for. So this tax credit would provide some relief to Vermont caregivers who are doing this on a regular basis and doing this in a quiet way and in a way because they love their families, their communities, but they're being exposed and hurt by it economically. So we believe we've got some work to do in the Senate. We're looking forward to engaging the Senate. We're going to push very hard for a hearing in the Senate Finance Committee. That really is job one for us right now, and we are planning to start pushing hard on that very, very soon, as early as Monday of next week. And I feel hopeful that the Senate Finance Committee, some members who we talked to, agree that there should be a hearing on this bill, and I think that we should get a hearing and then take it from there. And
that would allow the Senate to hear from Vermonters who are providing this unpaid, unacknowledged free labor.
Yeah, we have some people who will certainly be willing to tell their stories. For example, I have my mom. I'm very fortunate. She lives in Burlington. So do I. My father passed away a couple of years ago, and she's got some issues, and she needs some help. I work for an organization that provides actually caregiving leave, so I don't have to use my sick leave or my vacation time. Yeah. So if I need to take my mother to a doctor's appointment, or just need to get her out of the house, right, which she does need help with, so that we can put her stuff in the car and go have lunch and take a walk. I work for a place that provides support for that, but we're a unicorn in that kind of environment. And I think that we've been active with talking to this about our members, and what we hear back largely is, many of them are doing this in some way, and they don't really realize they're doing it until either something negative happens or they're reminded of, well, yeah, I am doing this. Yeah. And it is costing me some money. Yeah. And it is, and once that sort of level sets, they want to be a part of doing something about it. This is not a paid leave program. We're talking about a tax credit here, which is very different. So
is it going to be an income-sensitive tax credit? Is that an income-sensitive tax credit? And what's the impact on, what is the impact that you're estimating right now on Vermont?
Well, we'll see what Senate Finance puts forward, and we'll see what JFO says. So I'm gonna hold off sort of talking about that right now until we can get a full engagement on this. But this is tax credits are a popular way to do things like this, And again, it's not a paid leave program. So there's a big difference there in how the program would be implemented and executed.
Great. So that's S231. You're hoping to see some hearings on that coming up, and then we'll learn more from the Joint Fiscal Office as they dig into what's the impact on Vermonters. Let's move on to fraud prevention. What is AARP Vermont doing right now on this question of fraud and scam prevention?
Well, last year we worked on legislation which passed. So I'll talk to you a little bit about, first thing is a sort of cryptocurrency, but even more importantly in Vermont, the advent of what are called crypto ATMs. So looks like a cash machine, acts like a cash machine, but is not a cash machine. We were tipped off to this issue by our friends and colleagues in our Iowa office, who worked closely with their attorney general in examining these cryptocurrency ATMs that were popping up in the Des Moines area. And what they found was somewhere around 7 in 10 of those actions were fraudulent with what the ATM was doing. So we've worked to here in Vermont.
This is an actual physical machine? This is an actual physical machine? And are there any of these in Vermont right now?
There is one currently. Coinbase is a major national company that would like to put them in all over the place.
Yeah.
We worked with the House Commerce Committee and on the Senate side to put a moratorium on these, which exists through the remainder of this year. But this is sort of the kind of thing that nobody needs, and they tend to target the elderly. So we want to be really clear about what these things do and don't do. And the truth is that we don't need them. They're not going to add value to anything in our economy. The real issues also around fraud and scams are that this is in the United States, this is a multiple $billion-a year crime. And we see reports in our state from time to time with people losing 10, 15, 30, 60, $100,000 in scams. The ones that we are particularly focused on recently have been one called sort of the romance scam, which tend to prey on older people, tend to prey on people that live alone in more isolated areas. It's what they call sort of a long play. So the scammer works to endear him or herself to the potential victim through text conversations, through Facebook and Instagram direct conversations. What they do is, of course, they learn more about the victim and they start to make promises, and then they say, well, I'd love to come see you. But, the businesses I've been telling you about are sort of a little bit locked up right now. If you could send me $3,000, I could get a plane ticket. And these things sort of go on, and people lose thousands and thousands of dollars. These imposter scams can also manifest themselves not just this way, but another popular scam is for someone to get a phone call or an email, usually a phone call using this new voice artificial intelligence kind of software, which is almost kind of a free thing you can do if you just Google it, frankly. It's a grandson calling from Montreal calling the grandparents saying, I've been arrested in Montreal. I really don't want you to tell my parents. I just need, $2,700 to get out of jail and pay my fine, and then everything will be okay. And I need you to wire that money, Western Union that money right away. And what grandparent isn't going to want to come to the aid of a grandchild that is, in trouble? So these are these fear-based scams, which sort of put people in a real heightened level of engagement. And so they don't take a deep breath, they don't take a step back, and they send the money, and it's gone for good. And so imposter scams really are ones we're focused on because they tend to target the elderly. We have a cadre of volunteers, about 17 fully trained volunteers that do presentations all around the state on frauds and scams. And in April, we're hosting a large event in South Burlington with Attorney General Charity Clark, which will have breakout sessions, a keynote speech from the Attorney General, and an opportunity to do more of a deep dive on these. What we know is that the more educated people are, the more understanding of what's coming at them and how to deal with it, the better protected they are, because many of these scams originate outside of the United States, and they're literally impossible to prosecute. So it is only a very, very rare occasion when someone loses money in a scam like this that they'll ever get it back.
Yeah. If you were to give Vermonters just like the one line, the thing that you tell your mother when she gets a phone call, what's the one thing that you're going to say to avoid falling victim to frauds and scams?
Take a deep breath and do not act immediately. Take a step back and think, oh, well, my grandson Jordan just called me and said he's in a lot of trouble. Maybe what I should do is call my grandson and find out if everything's okay. And then you call Jordan, and Jordan says, Grandma, I'm great.
Yeah.
You know, I'm in my dorm room in college and I'm doing my homework. And so it really is what these psychological experts talk about, getting a victim into the ether. So that's a heightened state of agitation and awareness. And when you're in that state, what we know from brain science is that your normal processing skills don't work well and you are overcome by emotion. Yeah. And that is when bad decisions are made.
Yeah. Let's move from there. Maybe I'm showing my bias here, but towards age ratings in insurance. This is another area that AARP Vermont is talking about. So we're going to move from the question of frauds and scams by sort of ne'er-do-wells into the where we're getting fleeced based on our age by insurance companies.
Well, I love that setup because I think that is whether you're showing any bias or not, you're also showing strong knowledge about what age rating is. Let's just first set the floor here so that your viewers understand. Vermont and New York, Massachusetts have the strongest community rating programs in the country. And there's a reason why we have strong community rating, because the purpose of insurance in general is to spread the risk broadly. That's why if you're younger and you need less, then that's okay, because someday you're going to need more. You may need that as a young person too, but someday you're going to need more. So we have a very strong community rating program here that should not be touched, that should not be messed with. This bill that came down, I believe, from the governor's office and has a few co-signers, in addition to age rating, which we'll talk about more in depth in a second, it also had issues associated with prior authorization in it, which can really be a barrier to getting the kind of care that people need. But let's go back to age rating. Really what this bill is talking about doing
does this bill have a bill number? Greg, does this bill have...
H585.
And so you're opposing H558. Okay, got it.
Yes. Yeah. And this bill, age rating is very simple. What it does is it charges older people more money for their health insurance, so that, it's with some sort of cockamamie theory that they can charge less for younger people who use less. So on one hand, it completely defies the purpose of community rating and spreading risk like they do, like what auto insurance does, like what true health insurance should do. And secondly, it discriminates based on age, which is also not allowed. So this is a bill that we need to stop. It is our understanding at the moment that the House is considering stripping the age rating out of this bill before it crosses to the Senate. We'll see that, whether that happens or not. But yes.
And I'm assuming this is justifying, I'm assuming the justification here is around sort of propping up our insurance agencies, which are in Vermont, we saw Blue Cross Blue Shield on the brink of disaster last year, and certainly still being supported by an outside Blue Cross Blue Shield firm. So we do have a struggle going on. So I'm assuming that this bill is trying to support those insurance agencies.
Yeah, and I look at this bill sort of what I call sort of a lunch bucket bill. It has a lot of different disparate parts in it, and there are some things in this bill which we think are fine. But age rating is not one of those things.
Got it.
And to the visual that you just put up, that we've been using around the state, it's an age tax. That's just like that's exactly what it is. And people shouldn't be taxed because they're 58, 64, 71, or 85. That's not a reason to tax people. And they're also, I think the argument that the supporters of this bill has made is that if you increase costs on the aging and lower costs on young people, more young people will purchase insurance. And there's just absolutely no data to support that anyway.
Yeah.
So it really is unfortunate. I think there's been some great leadership in the House Healthcare Committee. Chairwoman Black's asked a lot of good questions, as have other members of the committee who I think are very skeptical that this is a good idea. But we're watching this one very, very closely as it moves to the Senate.
So you've got a lot going on, and I got two things, and we only have a couple minutes left. So just briefly on what AARP is doing around transportation funding and sort of the importance you talked about, walkable communities where folks are able to get around. I certainly know, I have two parents who live in a rural area who are not able to drive anymore. And this is a real issue to be able to get to doctor's appointments, to the foot clinic, to bridge, to whatever it is that they need to do. And then talk a little bit about how the Livable Communities grant, you're doing these supportive grant projects that are tying into that transportation livable communities.
Yeah, we're really proud of the AARP Community Challenge, and just a point of pride. And these are micro grants that we started doing in Vermont about 15 years ago, and the organization liked the idea so much that now we scaled this nationally. And this year, we'll be providing, I think, a little over $10 million in grants to communities all across the country. So these are grants that are for small, targeted for communities. To be able to take action to do something that will make their town more livable. And they range in ideas from developing, providing bike lanes, doing sidewalk work, so on the infrastructure side. But they also, we do a lot of stuff with sort of placemaking. So we get grants where people want to upgrade a park in their community, or develop a pocket park, or provide activities for people to go to during the wintertime. So it's a range of things that our grants support, but they all are targeted to make communities more livable and better places. What you described about your parents is something that I think we would put close to the very top of how we're trying to sort of think through what kind of public policy we need. We have a very poor public transportation infrastructure in Vermont. If you don't live in Chittenden County, there really isn't any. And what we're seeing now is a diminishment of that as resources are being pulled away from Green Mountain Transit. But if you live in a small rural community, you have very, very limited options if you have them at all. And we need to really start thinking about how we connect two things: how we connect the people that need services, so they need a healthcare service, or they just need to go to the grocery store, or you say they just need to be able to get to a friend's house to play bridge and have dinner with friends. Like, all of those things are equally important. And our approach is to start talking about and trying to provide some resources for people to do things in their own towns, to make them more walkable, to make them more livable, and to provide services and to provide some form of local economy. So there's a reason for people to come to these small towns and spend money. But this is a huge problem in our state, and one that we are barely getting our arms around. It's not getting less complicated. It's getting more complicated. It's not getting less expensive. It's getting more expensive. And this is, transportation, particularly as it has this impact on rural communities, some communities who are an hour and a half, 2 hours away from a hospital or their own doctor, for example. We've got to get our elected officials to start paying attention to this. It won't be easy, and it will cost money, but we have to figure out ways to offer affordable transportation options to people in Vermont, because we are a drive-first state, and for many of our older residents who live in rural communities, driving first is not an option.
Yeah. Well, Greg Marchildon, thank you so much, Executive Director of AARP Vermont. And I think we have your website up there if folks want to learn more about this series of initiatives that you're working on. Thanks for joining us. Thank you all for watching, and be safe and good luck.